Hey guys, what's up? It's Blake coming at you with a video today. I know it's been a while. I've only had a couple videos posted on here, but I wanted to start doing something here. Maybe put a couple Bible studies on to YouTube here, and I know it's going to be great. If you guys like it, I want you to like, subscribe, make sure you get a hold, so that I know that I want to keep doing these videos. So, what I'm going to do is that today's Bible study is going to be one that I taught for a Bible study the other week. And I thought it was really good, and I want to share it with you guys. So, without further ado, here we go. So, we're going to start out reading Romans 8:28 through 31. And somewhat of a familiar passage of scripture, but here we go. Verse number 28, and we know that all things work together for the good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose, for whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Verse number 30, moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called, and whom he called, them he also justified, and whom he justified, them he also glorified. What shall we say then to these things? If God be for us, who could be against us? You see, today you have purpose. You are not alive on this earth by accident. You are not a product of chance. There is a purpose for your life. Your life has a meaning. You have purpose. You see, in our passage, Paul is writing his letter to the Church of Rome, telling them about their purpose. He starts out by stating something that he assumes the Romans know. He says that all things will work together for the good of them that love God and are called for his purpose. Did you know that you are called of God? Did you know that God has a specific purpose for your life? In fact, 1 Peter 2:9 says that, but ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. We are called, we are chosen to be different from this world. God has called you out of the darkness of this earth and into the light of his salvation. God also has a specific calling for each of us. That is our identity. We find identity not in how much money we have or how many followers on social media we may have, how many subscribers we may have on YouTube, but in the calling that God has placed on our life. That's where we find our identity. We are all called to worship, praise, and glorify God. We are called to serve him, to take up our crosses and follow him. We are called to draw people closer to God. We are a chosen generation. Paul then goes on to say that God has predestinated that purpose for our lives. What this means is that he has a purpose for us for such a time as this. Before you were even conceived, God had you in mind. He had a purpose in mind just for you. Some believe that this predestination means that God forces us to do his will, but that philosophy is completely false. God has given every person the power of free will. He does not force us to follow his purpose, but it is always there for us to follow after. In fact, God knows the next decision you will make, the next trial that will come your way. This is because he lives in eternity. He is not bound by the time like we are. He is at the creation of this world and the destruction of this world all at once. It is all one blurb of the purposeful decisions and creations of God. That's why he is called the first and the last. Verse 29 also tells us that We are called to conform to the image of Jesus. We are called to try our hardest every day that we live, to strive to be like our Savior. What would Jesus do is not just a saying, but it's a lifestyle. It's the very question that should shape our every life, every day of our lives. We should shape it toward what Jesus wants us to do. It is our purpose to strive to be like him. Verse 30 continues this by saying that who God predestinates, he also calls. He doesn't just have a purpose for you, but he is calling you to fulfill the purpose. You might be telling yourself right now that you don't think you're good enough, or you don't think you have the justification to fulfill the will of God. Paul continues verse 30 and tells us that when God calls you to fulfill the purpose he has for your life, he justifies you. He provides the credentials and the justification for you to go after your purpose. Paul goes on to say that those that are justified of God will be glorified by God. But we need to always remember that we must return the glory to the only one who deserves it. The last verse of our passage sends a simple message with a whole lot of meaning. Paul asks the Romans, what should be said about all of these things? What should be said about God's purpose and plans and calling for our lives? What should we say about the justification and the love and the working of things together for our good? The only thing we could say about all of these things is this: if God be for us, who can be against us? Obviously, this is a rhetorical question. No one can be against us when God is for us. People may not like what you're doing. They may try their hardest to stop you, but God will always make sure you prevail if he's for you. Because if God is for us, who can be against us? So I pray today that this encourages you. You are here for a purpose. You may or may not know what that purpose is, but you have purpose. You are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are valuable to God. In fact, you are so valuable to him that he died on a cross for you. Jesus thought you were worth the pain and suffering on that day. But don't forget that he rose in victory so that we can have life and have it more abundantly. Don't forget that you're on this earth for a reason, for a purpose. Don't you ever think that your life is worthless. You are worth it. Don't throw in the towel. Keep fighting. Keep striving to be like God. Find your purpose, and let God help you fulfill it. And that's all I have for you today. If you like it, make sure you like. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you comment. I want to see your reactions. I want to see what you think about this. Because if you begin to like this, I'm going to keep doing it and have more and more Bible studies like this and maybe some other content. But make sure you give it a thumbs up. And I pray that this does help you today, that you understand you have a purpose in God. And so, that being said, I hope you have a great day, and God bless.